This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 504 for February 9th, 2017. Coming up on today's show, Solo Poly and the Relationship Escalator. That's coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Minx, and we have a fabulous co-hosted interview for you today. That's right. We brought on AggieSez, who is the author of the solopoly.net blog, as well as of a brand new book based on surveys that she did of over 1,500 solo poly people called Off the Relationship Escalator. Actually, let me get the title exactly right. It is Stepping Off the Relationship Escalator, Uncommon Love and Life. There are two announcements that I'm really excited to make before we get into the interview with Co and AggieSez. And those are, number one, drumroll please. The website polyweekly.com has been updated. Yes, it's only been, 10 years, and I finally updated the website with the help of another fabulous sex-positive podcaster who also does website design, Cooper Beckett. Hat tip to you, Coop. Thanks so much for working with me on this. So if you haven't checked out polyweekly.com lately, please do. Instead of the traditional blog format, now we have a homepage. Crazy. Where you can get information on everything we offer through the site. Yes, you can still find all the podcast and blog posts, and you can still subscribe to the blog and to the podcast, but we also have information about our books, our bookstore, our classes, and our new FAQ section, which is slender now, but we'll be filling out very soon, and also some basic housekeeping like testimonials about how great we are and how you can contact and support us. I'm just very pleased that we finally have a respectable looking homepage. So I would encourage you folks to go take a look and let us know if it's still easy enough to find everything that you're looking for. Also, number two, drumroll please. Our brand new poly dating ebook is out. That's right. No Dick Pics, your guide to creating an irresistible online dating profile, is out as an ebook on Amazon. So I'll provide a link to that in the show notes, or you can just go to Amazon and search for No Dick Pics. Oddly enough, there are two titles that start out that way. Ours is the one that has the half-naked man with the chicken coming out of his crotch. Yeah, now you want to search just for that, don't you? Now, we're really excited about this. We decided to write this ebook because the online dating class that it stemmed from was one of our most popular classes, and people were complaining that, hey, I don't live in a city or I don't have the money to come see you teach a class at this event, but I want the information. And we figured out the cheapest and easiest way to do that for you folks was as an ebook. And so we put it together, we got some nice design, we got all the content in there, we had many people look it over to make sure that it's all right and proper. We priced it so that it would be hopefully affordable to most of you. We priced it at $4.99. It's currently only available as an ebook. We're looking at whether or not we will do it as an actual paperback. My hesitation is that it's a very slender volume. It's actually about half the length of 8 Things I Wish I'd Known About Polyamory. And so I just didn't want it to be too skinny. So we'll see. But you can find it right now, both on our website by clicking on Buy My Books. Or you can find it at Amazon by doing a search for either Cunning Minx as author or No Dick Pics as title. And so please, if you do read it, please do write a review on Amazon. It helps other people discover it. And be honest, if you love it, please say so. If you hate it, please say so. There's always some really great 1-star reviews out there. They're always really entertaining. But of course, we prefer 5-star reviews because, it puts money in the Poly Weekly coffers. And it makes us happy to know that we're providing something of value to you folks. Those are 2 big announcements this week. And what that means is that A, I can finally sleep, and B, we can get to that fabulous interview on Solo Poly. I am pleased to welcome back to the Poly Weekly Studios, Co-Creation. Welcome back to my favorite co-host.
Thank you so much, Minx. It's great to be here. This is Co-Creation, your 21st century sex educator, talking about all things related to second generation, millennial perspective, and today, solo poly.
And we have one of our Solo Poly experts on the show today. Welcome to AggieSez, author of the solopoly.net blog. Welcome.
Hi, Minx. Good to talk to you again. How you doing?
I am fantastic and so happy both of you are here.
Mm-hmm.
And since this interview was your idea, I will hand the reins over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much. So I identify as solo poly, and I know what that means for me is a life that I think of myself as my own primary, and I am creating the relationships as I best see fit with different individuals, but don't have a anchor partner, as some may say. And Aggie has written a whole bunch on this topic and has gotten a bunch of other people to give their voice to said topic. So I wanted to connect with her and have her speak to her experience and her awesome projects. So Aggie, how do you define solo poly?
Well, for me, and I'm trying to be as generic about it as I can, is being poly without necessarily having or wanting a life-entwined relationship where you are combining the infrastructure of your life, like living together with a partner, or finances, or blending your identity, really strongly identifying as a we rather than as a me. So people who are solo poly are poly people who really maintain an emphasis on their individuality within their relationship. And they do that both mentally and logistically, how they run their lives.
I love that. I've always seen poly relationships as sort of like different Lego pieces or puzzle pieces that there's each aspect of the relationship and you can engage in the ways that you want and you don't have to use the particular pieces that you don't want.
Correct.
I'm all about metaphors. And I happen to know that you use a particular metaphor in your project called the Relationship Escalator. Would you tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, I'm about to publish the very first book in a series. There's going to be at least 3 books in this series called Off the Relationship Escalator. And the concept of the relationship escalator is it's the default bundle of societal expectations for intimate relationships, however you want to define intimate. And that's when partners follow a progressive set of steps, and each of those steps has its own visible markers, and it's going on a trajectory toward a clear goal. It's the standard by which most people gauge whether a developing intimate relationship is significant or serious or good or healthy or committed or worth pursuing or continuing. It's what most people usually mean when they say in a relationship. It's what people will assume, and you don't have to explain it. If you're doing something else, that's what you have to explain. So that's why it's a social norm. And the goal at the top of the escalator is to achieve a permanently monogamous relationship that's sexually and romantically exclusive between only 2 people, where they're living together and where the relationship is legally sanctioned if possible, such as a marriage. And it's a one-way trip, okay? You're only supposed to go up. You're not supposed to pause. You're not supposed to step back. And once you get to the top, the escalator partners are expected to remain there until one of them dies.
Yeah.
And, there are some commonly, common related goals to that, such as, buying a home together or having kids together, but those aren't quite as mandatory as they used to be. The other things are still pretty mandatory.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is very well thought through from what I can tell.
I've been thinking about it a lot. This project has been 4 years in the making.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that work. And I know that this isn't just a series of books that is written by you. There were a lot of people involved in this process, correct?
Yeah, I have 1,500 co-authors. This all started back in 2013 after I'd been writing the solo poly blog for about a year and mentioning the relationship escalator concept. And I did a blog post called Riding the Relationship Escalator or Not that kind of set forth a lot of, here's what we're talking about when we're talking about the relationship escalator. Mm-hmm. And it got crazy popular. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm a writer. Let me do a book. I've never done a book, and I'll make it easy. I'll put up a survey. I'll get maybe 100 people to respond to this, and then I'll find a couple dozen people out of that to interview, and then boom, I'll have the book out in 6 months. Well, it's 4 years later. The reason being, I got 300 responses in the first week. Wow. And over the course of a little over a year, without even trying, I got 1,500 responses. And many of these responses, people were writing the equivalent of like 2,000 or 2,500 word essays. I have such a volume of data, qualitative data, where people are telling stories. And so I took a lot of time to really read through and kind of analyze what these people were saying. And the result is the book one is coming out, and it talks about all the different ways that people step off the escalator. And I quote over 325 people in the first book alone. And about a third of the content of the book is direct quotes from people who participated in the survey.
I think that's super awesome. Minx and I talk a lot about the fact that like we have a platform in which we can talk about this stuff, and what perspectives are we also including in that? And like we're just two poly femme presenting people. So like I love that you engaged and you are promoting many voices and perspectives through this project.
I was totally stunned because the basic question I asked in the survey that boiled down to this are your intimate relationships unconventional? And if so, how? And I mean, I asked a little bit more than that, but that's what it boiled down to. And people describe lots of ways. It's definitely not all about non-monogamy. And the interesting thing about the answers I got is that by parsing out how people said their relationships are unconventional, that shone a light on the flip side of it, which is what makes a relationship conventional, what actually defines the relationship escalator. And I was able to define 5 hallmarks of escalator relationships and explain what they are in the book. And then most of the book, it's 24 chapters, is flipping it around and looking at what happens when you don't do each of those.
Oh, fun. Would you be open to sharing maybe one or two of them?
Yeah, sure. And, I'll tell you this.
I want to know all 5.
I'm just saying.
I can give you the quick version. Okay. So there's 5 hallmarks of escalator relationships. The big one, the most visible 800-pound gorilla here, is monogamy. And that is mutual and perpetual sexual and romantic exclusivity between only 2 people. Okay, the next one is merging. That's more than just living together. Okay, that's blending the infrastructure of your life and identity. Again, becoming more of a we than a me. And then there's hierarchy. Now, this is interesting because hierarchy is something that we hear a lot in polyamory, but you think, how would that apply to, monogamous relationships out there in the mainstream? Well, when you think about monogamy as a norm in the first place, there can be only one is one hell of a hierarchy. In addition to that, your escalator partner is expected to be prioritized over almost every other adult personal relationship you might have. Your friends, your family, basically anybody who's not really dependent on you, like elderly parents or children that you're raising. You're supposed to put your escalator by default above them in terms of how you make all sorts of decisions. And that norm is changing a bit. People tend to value their friendships a lot more now, but that's still, it's really important. People mention that a lot in the survey. Okay, the fourth one is having a sexual and romantic connection, which kind of leaves people who are asexual and aromantic out of the picture.
I was just thinking that.
Right, yeah. The biggest and best surprise of doing the survey, where I heard from a few hundred people who are along the asexuality or aromantic spectrum. And wow, you want to think really hard about relationships, take sex and or romance out of the picture. And then the fifth one, it was kind of mushy, but it became more and more important as I read through the survey, is the hallmark of continuity and consistency. Basically, that's the relationship escalator is all or nothing and forever. Okay. Again, there's no pausing, stepping back, shifting roles. It's about achieving a static form for a relationship. And so those are the 5 hallmarks. So when you flip those around, I came up with a bunch of different ways that people are stepping off the relationship escalator. So there's a corresponding one for each of those. The first one is if you step away from monogamy, you get consensual non-monogamy. Notice I said consensual, okay, because non-monogamy is so common. But the thing is, okay, people cheat all the time. And when people cheat, they get upset, they get shocked, they get outraged, but nobody's confused. People know how cheating works. They know what it is. It's got a lot of social conventions. It's kind of like a hack to reconcile the escalator with human nature. So the consensual non-monogamy there are many approaches. Polyamory is only one. So then if we take a look at the merging hallmark, and we flip that around, it's maintaining and prioritizing your autonomy. And this is where the solo stuff gets really important. Okay? Not living together with a partner or socializing separately, making big life choices independently. And then it gets into more subtle stuff too, like your intimate partner is not your default companion. You know, if you have free time available that's not otherwise scheduled, does that assume to be me time or we time? Yeah. Or do you assume that your intimate partner, your lover, or your spouse is going to be your default or perhaps your only emotional or logistical support? It's a whole lot of assumptions bundled up in this escalator thing. And the thing about solo, the prioritizing autonomy in that way is that it can apply regardless of your relationship status or style. Okay. You can be solo and have 0 partners or 10. You could be solo and be poly. You can be solo and be monogamous. There's a lot of people out there in mainstream culture who are doing this thing called partners. They have otherwise conventional relationships.
Wait, what is a partners?
A partners, yes.
Like apartment, but a partner.
Yeah, a partner. Yeah, it's another neologism. God, these relationship.
I love
radicals.
it.
Yeah, there's actually a documentary coming about this. It looks pretty cool. Anyway, I write about all that in the book. But anyway, so being solo or otherwise prioritizing your autonomy over the merging, that's another way to step off the escalator. Now, if you step away from hierarchy, you get egalitarian relationships. And this is really interesting. This is basically, hierarchy comes down to default decision making. In practical terms, it means that in situations that involve more than one relationship, some partner or relationship is going to win by default. Okay, in egalitarian relationships, the choices that affect more than one relationship get navigated situationally. People look at what's going on and they make the decision. They don't always assume that some relationship or partner is going to win. And this can also happen in monogamy, where people might really strongly value their friendship and decide to go live with a friend for a year this stuff happens. But it's especially visible and in consensual non-monogamy, and especially in polyamory. Egalitarian versus hierarchical relationships is, Manx, it's a real hot button. It's very controversial. Whereas with other types of consensual non-monogamy, like swinging or don't ask, don't tell, hierarchy is kind of part of the game. That's how it works. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so then if you step away from the requirement of a sexual and or romantic connection, well, sexual and romantic connection, then you get relationships involving people along the asexuality or aromantic spectrum, and also non-sexual relationships. There are people who life partner with their best friends, or with family members. These are all very intimate, important relationships that people were speaking up in my survey that they value. And what it comes down to there is what kind of relationships count. when you're talking about an intimate relationship.
And who's the judge? Like,
yeah, I know.
Who's this counsel who's judging the relationships? Yeah.
I tried not to. As these surveys were coming in, I was just like, whoa, okay, so that's different. And it became very important to respect other kinds of intimacy. And then the fluid and the short-term and discontinuous relationships step away from that all or nothing thing. Like, do you ever have a relationship where somebody comes in and out of your life over a while? Do you consider that relationship over when for those gaps?
Right.
What's going on in there?
The comet.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
The comet, or I know a lot of people who go to festivals and there is somebody that they always kind of partner up with at that festival, but that's the only context where they're really together.
Yeah, their festival spouse.
Right, or an agreedly short-term relationship.
Polyconerous, we call it.
Exactly, yes. And then there's relationships that are agreeably short-term, where people know going in that it's only going to last until school ends, or it only is going to last while I'm on vacation. But these relationships can really mean a lot for people. We're used to dismissing them because they're not always and forever. But people really expressed in the surveys that it's valuable to them. So again, 5 hallmarks for escalator relationships and 5 ways that people step off and 24 chapters, and I go through it all.
Woohoo! I'm so excited. I'm going to sit down with one of my sweeties and have book reading dates. I think that'll be my style for doing that.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. I'm really excited.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
If there were one thing that you wish people would understand about solo poly, if you could just pick one thing that you could drill into people's heads, what would it be?
Ooh, I think it would be just understanding that polyamory is something that people do, not couples.
That's a good one.
And I'm not trying to diss people who really like being coupled up or tripled up or whatever. That is totally cool. But I think it's important to not lose sight of who you are as an individual for a lot of reasons. People tend to be more effective partners and more effective in relationships when they're still in touch with who they are and what they need. And also, if you hinge so much of your identity on being part of this multi-headed couple unit thing, then what happens when you're not part of that couple anymore? People just get totally lost and disoriented. It's disruptive to every part of their life. People commit suicide over that stuff. And I think having the awareness and the skills that it takes to be effectively solo, regardless of whether you're poly or not, will suit you better for whatever happens in your relationship, and it's going to make it better in your relationship. That's my opinion. Also, it just rocks having my own space.
Amen.
Can I just say that?
Yes, absolutely.
I was married to a man I love dearly. He's a clutter fiend. This is one of many reasons why us being married was not a good idea. But now he's my closest friend. He lives a mile away, and he has his own place, and this is good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about building the thing that works best for you, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something, though, that is pretty much always on my mind when I'm thinking about solo poly identity. The advantages that are given to couples in society.
Mm-hmm.
What is your perspective on that?
Well, there's 2 ways of looking at it. There are advantages that are given to couples, but not all couples. If you have an escalator relationship, that's something that conforms to all 5 of those hallmarks, you're going to get a lot of recognition and support that you don't even have to necessarily think about. And here's what, a lot of times people think of advantages and privileges equaling advantages. And there are some advantages, tangible things like health insurance access, or there's lots of appropriate housing around, cheaper vacation packages. But when it comes down to it, privilege just means the world is slanted in your favor and you are what is perceived to be normal. Normal is a very, very powerful position. It means that society is mostly set up to accept and accommodate you. And if you don't fit into that normal role, then it's more difficult for you. You face more hurdles. And also other people aren't quite sure how to interact with you. There's a lot of awkwardness there. Some of them are direct advantages. And then there's also the stigma that comes along with not having an escalator style relationship. For instance, you could be coupled up And if everybody knows you're poly, you're going to lose a lot of that privilege right there.
Right.
Yeah. But so couple privilege is just part of escalator privilege, but within the realm of consensual non-monogamy, you can still have couple privilege. And this is an issue that many solos face. This is something that the hierarchy that comes out in polyamory is an effective couple privilege. People presuming that because they are in a certain kind of relationship, they get to set the rules for everybody else in that network of relationships, and they get to call the shots about it. And again, this is a valid choice. People can make that choice. I'm not trying to undermine that, but I'm just saying, realize where that comes from is the assumption that people who are in a couple, that relationship is inherently more valuable than other kinds of relationships.
Right. And one of the things that I've recognized, I don't have the same conditioning that a lot of people have. Like, there's a huge conditioning around escalator relationships and around all of those conventions that you spoke of. And part of it is comfort and habit, right? So even if it is not a conscious decision that you're making, you are trying to take care of yourself to engage your own comfort when you're experiencing a little bit more like holistic way of doing relationships, something that you have to like critically think about and engage in on all levels.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, also too, you were raised in a polyfamily so
I know. I have my own whole other set of things that I deal with.
But no, and that's true.
You have a different kind of normal.
And the norms are changing. That's one thing that I talk about in this book is some of the ways that norms are changing. And, some of these things, aren't quite as important, major hallmark things for escalator relationships as they used to be. It's okay. That's good. Society changes all the time.
Very cool. So Minx, I've been sort of plugging away. Do you have any extra questions that you'd like to add to the conversation?
So apart from the societal disadvantages of being solo poly, I wonder what is the hardest part about being solo poly, apart from things like, couple privilege and people not understanding what it is?
I think it's because it's a twofer on freaking people out. Okay, you're not just stepping away from one escalator hallmark. You're stepping away from the two biggest ones at the same time. And this means that even within the poly community, a lot of people just don't get that you can be poly but not want to live with any of your partners. I still encounter, it's thankfully a lot less common than it used to be 5 years or so ago when I started writing about this, but I still get people who assume that I must only do casual relationships, or that I don't care very much about my relationships, that, if they were to fade out or end, I wouldn't be hurt by that. No, nothing's farther from the truth. Minx, you've known me a long time.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting trying to navigate relationships. There are so many things that I need to have clarifying conversations about way, way early in a relationship. Most times people are like talking about how they handle sexual health, but other than that, they just kind of, keep on just going through it because we know how this works, right? Yeah.
Right.
With me, I have to ask questions like, so, when I ask them about what their other relationships are like, do any of your relationships basically have any ability to exert control over how you and I might connect? To have requirements or constraints?
It's a terrible question to have to ask, but yeah, if you're solo poly, I guess you would have to ask it all the time.
I do, because I'm one of these. Now, some solo poly people are fine being involved in a hierarchy and taking an explicitly secondary role. That's totally cool. That doesn't work for me. The thing is, and it doesn't work for most people who I've met who consider themselves solo poly. And there are a lot of us. By the way, the solo poly Facebook group has 6,100 members now.
This is awesome.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you prioritize autonomy, it can be really hard to be in a relationship where you are not fully empowered to advocate for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I asked the question because I I never did ask that question. And what ended up happening, I was solo poly for many years, and I kept getting kicked around by couples who would, suddenly impose a rule on me. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. We're adults. Like, we should be able, the people in the relationship should be able to decide what happens. Of course, we don't want to hurt anyone. And of course, we want to be kind and considerate. But somebody who doesn't have my best interests at heart smacking a rule down on me? Oh, hell to the no.
Yes. Sneaky-archy. It's a thing.
Yeah.
Sneaky-archy is when people they're very optimistic and their intentions are good, and they don't think that they would behave hierarchically. They don't think that they would, but they don't know until you hit some bumps, when somebody gets insecure, somebody gets jealous, somebody gets pregnant, whatever. That's when this stuff starts crashing down. And I've been in several situations where it's like, ooh, I didn't realize how secondary I actually am. Yeah. That's hard. Yeah, so I have to have a lot of those conversations up front. And about autonomy, about people understanding that they are not going to take all my time or attention. They are not going to be moving in with me, ever. I don't think my cats would allow that, but still. That's the only hierarchical relationship I'll be in, is
with your cat. And the cat is always, as we know, at the top of the hierarchy.
Yes, pretty much, yeah. But yeah, those conversations, I have to have a lot of them early. And, that can take some of the buzz out of a relationship. It's harder for me to have relationships because I know myself very well and the kinds of relationships that work for me. And there are a lot of relationships that I would have liked to have gone deeper, but I know I just really can't go deep with this particular person because there are some things in it that are just going to be toxic to me if I get too deep with them.
Is it harder, or is it just more selective?
Well, both, but... yeah, I think more selective makes it harder to find partners, I think.
That's true. Amy, is there anything that we have not asked you that you wish that we had?
Oh, well, first of all, you just called me Amy, which is totally cool. People will see Off the Escalator coming out under my given name, which is Amy Guerin. I still go by
I did that on
AggieSez.
purpose.
Yeah, nice. I still go by AggieSez, a lot because people kind of know that name, and it's gotten to be kind of a nickname. But I think it's very important to be out about engaging voluntarily in unconventional relationships because a lot of people can't afford to be out, and the more of us who can be out, whether it's about being asexual or poly or whatever, the easier it makes for everybody else. The whole point of the book is to promote awareness of relationship choice so that people can make better choices in relationships, and also so it can make the world a friendlier place for unconventional relationships. So that's my greater good thing. But yeah, so if you get confused by the Amy or Aggie thing, that's okay. I answer to both. I just think it's important for people to be aware that they have options, whether or not they want to be able to explore them. If you're at least conversant about them, then that gives you room to negotiate, and that gives you more room to find potential common ground with people.
Solid. I'm fist bumping right now and smiling from ear to ear. It is so cool to hear the way that you framework these concepts. They're really accessible, and I'm just all snaps. I'm in total agreement.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, it just came out of the box like that. I mean, it's, yeah. No, you should have seen 4 years just hashing this stuff through. I was in a fetal position for the first year. But now I've got my feet under me. The next book in the series is going to be answers to 10 common questions that people get about unconventional relationships. This is all going to be part of book 1. It's like, whoa, that's too big. No. Cut that right in the middle.
Right.
And then after that is a book about stigma, being out, the outness of the closet, and how to make the world a friendlier place. Because the people who took my survey had a lot to say about that.
I am so excited. I can't wait for those to all come out. The first one is which, and is coming out when, and we can get it where?
Yes, it is Off the Relationship Escalator, Love and Life Beyond Society's Norms, and it'll be published as an ebook first, as a Kindle ebook. If everything goes well with my production process, that'll be by January 31st. You'll be able to buy it. It might be the first week of February if I hit some production glitches, but fingers crossed. And then I will also be selling EPUB and PDF versions of it through a separate platform. If you go to offescalator.com, you'll find all the information about the project. And if you sign up for the email list, you'll get the first notice that anybody will get. There's also a Facebook page for Off the Escalator, the Facebook page, and Off the Escalator is the Twitter account as well. And so you can find out about all that stuff there. The print edition will be coming out about another month after that, and then book 2 will be coming out later this year. And the book has a lot of interaction built into it, so people can take questions and surveys and engage with me on the website about this, because I'm planning this as an ongoing project. I'm really invested in this, and I want to keep hearing what people have to say.
That is fantastic. Thank you for doing that. Yes, indeed. AggieSez, also known as Amy Guerin. Did you have another question?
I got one more question. I do. I'm sorry. So, where can I, as a solo poly person, engage with other solo poly people? I heard that you might have a link.
Yeah, there is something really cool happening. Well, first of all, I'm one of 5 moderators of the Facebook Solo Polyamory group. And if you just search Facebook for Solo Polyamory, you'll find it. There are actually 2 groups, but one of them is really small, mostly dead. This one is kicking ass. It's great. And like I said, 6,100 people. So a couple of my fellow moderators from that group are doing in April the first International Solo Poly Conference. And that's going to be held April 28th through 30th in Vancouver, British Columbia. And here's where you can find all the information. We put up a short link for it. It's bit.ly, so bit.ly/SPCon, C-O-N as in Nancy, 17. So bit.ly/SPCon17. And that'll be solos from around the world gathering to share and discuss important issues to them. I'll be speaking there probably via Skype. Got some family stuff going on. I probably won't be able to attend in person, but I will be Skyped in for that. And 2 other the speakers are Meg John Barker, who wrote Rewriting the Rules, which is an awesome book about all kinds of unconventional relationships, and Kim Tallbear, who writes the Critical Polyamorous blog. And this is going to be interesting. There's going to be one day that specifically looks at the overlap between relationship anarchy and solo polyamory. Not the same thing. Relationship anarchy is more of a philosophy. Solo polyamory is a particular way of practicing relationships, but there's a lot of overlap between them. And they're still taking proposals for participant-led sessions. So if you go to bit.ly/SPCon17, you can not only register for it, but also contribute your session ideas. And it's incredibly affordable. My co-organizers found a venue in Vancouver, and the tickets are as little as $60 Canadian. And the early bird tickets are still available. Yeah, they have a few different pricing tiers, depending on a few factors. So go check it out. I really wish I could go. I was trying really hard, but it's looking like I'm not going to be able to be there myself, but I'm looking forward to Skyping in on it.
Thank you for sharing that. And we will put the link for those in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. And I just got really inspired and I say shit on the podcast. That means I'll do it. So I think I'm going to submit, actually. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It would be great. They would be so happy to have you there. I know you'd have brilliant things to say. So I highly recommend that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Co, for bringing up this topic. I feel like there's so many topics we just never spend enough time on, and this is one of them. And AggieSez, Amy, thank you so much for joining us. So excited to have you here. And I can't wait for your book. So,
I can't wait for it too. So I will probably be doing some kind of offer for Poly Weekly listeners. I just have to, everything else is like, all right, fine, I'll do that. I just need to get the damn book out first. So yeah, I'll get the damn book out and then we'll talk and I'll give you something for your listeners.
We'll put a link in the show notes. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. This will not be the last time we talk about solo poly.
Thank you.
And thanks again to both Co and Aggie for doing this interview. I felt like I learned so much, and I'm so excited that there's so many more resources for solo polys out there. Now, we'll provide all the links that we talked about today, including a free sample chapter that Aggie is giving away to Polyweekly listeners. It is actually Chapter 13, Going Solo, Autonomy in and Out of Relationships. That's a special freebie just for Polyweekly listeners, and I'll provide a link to that in the show notes at polyweekly.com. And as we close out, I want to thank all of you for listening. For those who donate, thank you for your donations. And if you have questions, comments, or feedback, you can email polyweekly@gmail.com. You can call 802-505-POLY, or if you'd like to book us to speak, you can do so by emailing lustyguy@polyweekly.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, it's not all about the sex.